Okay, suppose somebody raises a white flag, the internationally recognized symbol of surrender. At that point, you stop shooting, you accept their surrender, they become a lawful prisoner of war. You then have basically two options. You can take them to a prisoner of war camp, treat them the way they're supposed to be treated, or you can parole them. Believe it or not, you can put a prisoner of war on parole. Right then and there on the spot. In the Geneva Convention book, there are a number of forms. One of those forms is a detainee parole form. Gives you a list of questions you take, information you take from them, provides their name, rank, serial number. There's a few other things that do go if they want to be paroled, but it's all on that Red Cross approved form. Make copies of that ahead of time, make that part of your standard stockpile with prep. And you capture a POW, and if they're willing to accept parole, basically what they do is they sign a statement that they agree to cease permanently any hostilities. They sign the form. If you've got a digital camera or something with you, you take a picture of them to make it easier to identify them if they violate. And if they violate that parole, they're war criminals. That makes them subject to criminal prosecution and punishments that are not allowed. Now, as far as dealing with prisoners and whether or not you can punish them, whether or not you can take them to court or subject them to criminal punishment, normally with a prisoner, you can have camp rules in order to maintain good order and discipline in the prison camp. But your punishments for violations of camp rules cannot exceed 30 days. Doesn't matter how many violations they commit. When you punish them, all violations up to that point are punished as one thing, and the maximum punishment is 30 days. Okay? And after the 30 days, they go back to being brand new prisoners without any disciplinary record. It washes, and you have to start all over again. So there are some things that are punishable by criminal conduct, and those would be things like murder. Prisoners of war are allowed to attempt to escape, and you cannot punish them for it. It's not even a disciplinary reaction to attempting to escape or escaping. Absolutely prohibited. You capture them, all you can do is take them back to the camp and treat them like that person whose record, they're a brand new POW, and they now become. Now, if they kill a civilian or a non-combatant, or if they attack and injure a civilian or a non-combatant during the escape, that's punishable. But if they fight a soldier and kill him during the escape, that's combat. An escaped prisoner is a brand new soldier back in the field, and you have to treat him the same way you do any other soldier, with a couple of minor differences. If they put on one of your uniforms in the course of the escape, you can't punish them for putting on your uniform, and you can't treat them as a spy until their escape is complete, meaning that they've either reached neutral territory or returned to their own or allied forces. Until then, they're not spies just because they're in your uniform. Now, if you catch somebody who's not been a POW and they're in your uniform, that's a whole different thing too, because they're a spy and they can be shot. Okay? So, but if somebody waves a white flag, you've got to accept their surrender. If they take parole, you've got to let them go. Now, you don't have to offer parole. And United States military forces are barred by military law from accepting parole. Doesn't mean that they won't, but if they do, they'll be subject to punishment by the forces. But having been punished by the forces, they're not subject to being put back in the field in combatant status. Okay? So if those kinds of things happen, that's an option. And it's an important option because it would be hard for a militia unit to hold prisoners. because militia units are largely going to be operating in guerrilla-style conflict. Okay. The second additional protocol to the conventions covers something special with respect to militia units, because it says that you don't have to wear your uniform all the time. If you go in combat, you're required to wear some distinctive, garb that all of your people are distinctive as part of your unit. But once you're out of combat and the combat's terminated, you're free to go back to civilian clothes. Doesn't turn you into a spy. You go back to civilian clothes. You're not required to put them back on again until you're ready to go back into combat. So before the second protocol was adopted, it was quite common to hang guerrillas who were caught out of uniform. The second protocol says they can't do that anymore. I've talked several times at this point about the UN, about the possibility of the UN coming into play in the event the shit hits the fan. In 1992, for those of you who remember the Rodney King riots, the Secretary of the UN said that if the United States encountered any civil disturbance of equal magnitude in the future, he intends to deploy UN peacekeepers to enforce order in the United States. And if you haven't seen UN convoys traversing our interstates as they learn how and where to go deploy and implement that protocol, then you're not up at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're doing that. But it's quite common nowadays to see UN forces moving around in their blue helmets and their blue marked armored personnel carriers and preparing for just that eventuality. So just to be safe, we want to make sure we don't give them a reason to come in. Okay, that covers the basic preparation that we really need to cover with respect to the Geneva Conventions, the law of armed conflict. Everybody needs to read the handout. Everybody. If you've got somebody in your unit, make sure, because if they violate the law of armed conflict, it's going to come down on your whole unit. Okay, so you want to make sure that everybody's read that, make sure they understand what's in there. If you read it and you don't understand it, reach out to somebody who does. For the folks here, you know how to reach me. I'll answer the questions. For other folks, feel free to give them contact information for me if you know them, so that they can reach out. I'll still answer the questions. I'm making myself available nationally as a law of armed conflict advisor to any militia unit that needs my help, to any patriot group that wants advice on how that civil authority structure needs to be set up.